Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be seeing Liana De la Rosa talking about Anna Maria and the Fox. And notice I have it nice and pretty like that today because I don't have the physical book in hand. I bought it on my Kindle. My plain looking, boring Kindle. Because I have no stickers. Somebody buy me stickers. Husband, buy me stickers. But anyway, let's get ready to talk to Liana and let's get ready with our costume reveal.
3, 2, 1. Happy Midsummer! Ho, ho,
That's right.
ho. Because you need a little, because your book was like a gift, and I have it on my Kindle. My
I
Kindle.
love that.
Yeah, so I hope that I've brought some season's greetings to the middle of the year.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yes, good. I'm glad. And one thing before I get changed, what do you want for Christmas, little girl?
God, can I get more time? I don't know if that's possible. Can I
Yes.
get a time turner?
I will put this on my list. I will put this on my
Perfect.
dear Santa list. Okay. And
Love
so
it.
everybody else, hold a minute. I'm gonna get naked, and you're gonna have to watch me. Okay? All right.
Sounds like fun.
Great. All right. Good.
I admire your commitment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we're back, and today we're going to be talking about the book Anna Maria and the Fox. And if you guys haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, I highly recommend. Highly recommend. I really had a lot of fun reading this book. But why don't you do us a favor? Just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So Anna Maria and the Fox is a Latinx historical romance set in the Victorian era. It starts with three sisters who flee their home in Mexico City when the French forces under Napoleon III invade Mexico, and they are sent by their parents, who are prominent members of society. They are sent to the care of their maternal uncle, who is the Mexican ambassador to Britain. So they're sent to London, and they're supposed to lay low and kind of live quietly because they don't want to draw attention to themselves and their connection to the ousted Benito Juarez government. And instead, their uncle takes one look at them and is like, I can use your help, drumming up support for the Mexican people as he lobbies for support from the British government. And so Anna Maria, of the title, Anna Maria and the Fox, proceeds to take London society by storm with her two sisters. And that's when she meets Gideon Fox, of the title as well. And he is an up and coming member of parliament who is trying to eradicate all the loopholes involved with the Atlantic slave trade. He is the grandson of a formerly enslaved woman, and so it's like a cause that's near and dear to his heart. And he cannot afford to be distracted, especially by a foreign heiress who has a fiance back in Mexico. But of course, this is a romance, so they are drawn together over and over again until circumstances force them into a marriage of convenience that obviously becomes one of love. So that is Anna Maria and the Fox.
So you mentioned like it is a romance. It's funny. It would not be quite the romance if you were like, sorry, I have a fiance back home. Peace out. It would be an entirely different book. It would be about something
Totally different. Totally different.
I really liked Gideon because Gideon has this very dry personality, and like you can totally see his sense of humor, but his delivery is just so perfect. Like at least I was reading it that way. It was so wonderful, especially when you brought him together with Anna Maria, and Anna Maria is like very vivacious to me. She's just very much like like loving life as much as she can in the moment. She loves her bright colors, even though it's not, historically, that's not what they were wearing in the period in like the Victorian era. And I found that really nice, the difference between the two of them.
Someone called them a grumpy sunshine match, and I was like, really? And I guess I like thought about it for a moment. I was like, I guess because he is very, I wouldn't say grumpy. He's just very focused on the prize. And he's very mindful that as a biracial man in Victorian England, that he is held to a different standard than a lot of his peers are. And so he's kind of grown up knowing that he has to be better than everyone around him, right? And so he's mindful that he can't step out of bounds, or that if he engages in frivolity like his peers would, that he would be judged more harshly. So he's just kind of has this like really rigid um, approach to every kind of social situation that he's in. And he's like earned this like reputation of what, like not smiling and being very somber. And so he kind of just is like embraces that because it helps him to get kind of what he wants. And then he meets Ana Maria, who quite literally like trips in front of him. And she is just she'd spent like her life like trying to please an audience of one, her very domineering father, and now he's not there, and so she's kind of like taking a big breath for the very first time. And I kind of liked the thought that she kind of fell in love with a man that in many ways was like her father, but in all the ways that mattered most to her was so very different. But yeah, I liked how he or she was so she so effortlessly like snuck under his armor. And I think that was really important to me, especially because the book is a slow burn. Like it's so very slow. Um
It
and
didn't
I
feel
didn't mean
slow. It didn't feel
oh, I'm
slow.
so glad. I'm
Like I
so
was
glad because
so engaged the whole time that like I mean I know like they get together at the end of the book, but like I didn't feel like I wanted to strangle them. Sometimes I read slow burn and I literally just want to start punching people. I want to just grab them by the throat and be like, just kiss her. Like this
see,
is like
and that's how I felt writing it. I felt like, you two idiots, why can I not get you to kiss? Like, just nothing was like working for like who they are as characters. And so I found it very frustrating. I found it very frustrating. So when I see reviews, not that I try not to read my reviews, but if I do see them, I frequently see like it's a slow burn. Nothing happens, nothing happens. You know what they're talking about.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
happens like much later in the book, but that's just what they wanted to give me. Like I tried to like make it happen faster. Um, but these are just two characters who kind of were very honorable and like had their own agendas, and kept getting thrown together and were doing their best to like fight it because, well, she had a fiance and he knew that she had a fiance and she was going back to Mexico, and so all this stuff was in their way. So finally I was like, okay, you big dumb idiots, if anything's going to happen, I have to like force it to happen. Exactly. So, yes, that's where the whole marriage of convenience came in. Not that they were sad about it; they were quite happy, but because I had to like open up the way for them to be together.
Yeah, I thought that this was great because there were a lot of different characters in it because I feel like sometimes slow burn becomes kiss each other when it really focuses on just two people and they're the only
Mm-hmm.
people in the novel. But Ana Maria has her sisters, and Gideon has like this circle of friends, this tight circle of friends.
Mm-hmm.
This one in particular who you want to talk about like being glib. Is that the right word? Glib? I'm just
Yes,
gonna
I
use
love
that
that
word.
word
I'm
too.
gonna pretend I just used the right word.
You did.
I have a dictionary at home. But these other people came in bringing it flavor, and I really love that, especially the sisters, because they really felt like different people to me.
Mm-hmm.
Each seemed to have their own wants and needs and their own personality. Like they didn't blend together or just get relegated to a backdrop. They felt like they really
Yeah.
mattered in her life. And
Mm-hmm.
that was refreshing to me because I'm so used to reading romance where really the romantic characters and then maybe like the female main character has like one friend, you know?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
like this was very refreshing for me to read.
I'm so glad. I so in the very beginning stages of this series, it was pitched initially as a like women's fiction, like a literary fiction book. So the focus on the sisters' relationship was like the key focus. And then things happened, and then I changed it to a historical romance series, which was my preference anyways, because I like romance. And so I wanted it to be a kissing book. Um, but that whole, but that whole like arc of the sisters, like the dynamics of their relationship, I had already kind of fallen in love with it, and so I didn't want to change it, even though the series had changed to a romantic, a romance series. So there, I want to say that in this book, at least, especially as the first book in a series, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, right? It's like setting the stage, doing a lot of world building, introducing you to all the characters, and then Ana Maria and Gideon, the type of people that they are, it's not just about their relationship because their worlds are very big. Gideon has this whole career in Parliament. He's very focused and driven on these political and social reforms. And Ana Maria, as an older sister, she's very concerned about her sisters. And so it felt inauthentic to her character to not focus on the sisters' relationship because it was important to her. It was their first time like away from their father, who was very, he manipulated them in a lot of ways growing up, and pitted them against each other for like his affection. And he wasn't there anymore, so they were able to be friends in a way that they had never been able to before. And I really liked that part of the story, and I personally as an author got a lot out of it, and I didn't want to sacrifice any of those scenes with the sisters because they felt important to who Ana Maria was as a character. She's the eldest sister. I'm an eldest daughter. I think that there's like a lot of, especially I'm an eldest daughter in a Latino family, so I can really relate to Ana Maria in that aspect of the kind of expectations placed on you, the sort of role that you play in the family. Felt very personal to me, even though our circumstances are vastly different. My parents are amazing. But in a lot of ways I related to her. So I didn't feel like I could tell her story without focusing on her relationship with her sisters and how they build it. And in a lot of ways, the next two books, books 2, which is Isabel's book, and then book 3, which is Gabby's book, which is what I'm writing right now. They are different people with different priorities. So their books are in a lot of ways like smaller. So obviously the sisters are in their book because they're important to each other, but it's not as focused on them like it was in this first book, just because of who the characters were and the story that was being told. But those sister scenes, writing the 3 of them together, were some of my very favorite.
One of the things that I really loved, and I know that you wanted to, you focused on bringing this piece of history that happened in Mexico. We don't read about that combination with Victorian age.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very unique. And one of the things I really liked is that you allowed the sisters the space to speak Spanish. Now, like you put it in little drips and drops. So for people who aren't native,
Mm-hmm.
Spanish speakers, you can pick up by context what it is that they're saying. Or if not, you put, a sum up in Sora. That's
Yeah.
another, I'm just going to make up that word, sum up.
It works.
But I took high school Spanish and I knew what they were saying, just calling that out. But I loved that because that was authentic, made them more authentic
Mm-hmm.
to me. Because if they just came and they, came over off the boat and just immediately dove into the culture seamlessly, that just wouldn't have felt realistic to me. So I love that you held on to that piece.
Oh, I'm so glad. I tried to make it clear, and I hope I did in the story, that whenever it was the 3 sisters together, they were always speaking Spanish. Like that's because that's their language. Like that's how they would communicate. And I think it was sort of a challenge to incorporate the Spanish and to do it in a way that just felt natural. Because I think with speaking another language, and I'll be honest, I don't speak Spanish fluently. I know bits and pieces. My family has been here in the United States for generations, and unfortunately, Spanish is one of the byproducts that my generation lost. We're like the first generation that doesn't speak any Spanish. And so anything I learn, like I know I've had to teach myself and learn. And I know that code switching is hard, or it's not well, it's hard to write, right? Because you're thinking in two languages at once, or to switch over and to speak English when you're thinking in Spanish can be hard. And so the nature of switching back and forth between the two languages, I wanted to make it as seamless as possible. I don't know that I was always successful. I tried really hard
So
to do
I think
that.
so.
Oh, good. But yeah, I wanted it. If I was going to tell the story of three Mexican sisters, like I wanted them to be able to take their culture with them, and Spanish is a large part of that, and also at the same time be able to touch on sort of the politics of what language people were speaking. Right? There's a part in the book, like towards the beginning, where they get scolded for speaking Spanish, and Gabby, the youngest sister, is like, "But why? People speak French. The prince consort speaks German. Like, why can't we speak Spanish? And what does that say?" I think we have that conversation even now of like who is allowed to speak what language and when, because if a person from, an immigrant from Latin America speaks Spanish, they might be looked down upon, right? Like, oh, you're in the United States, speak English. But if it was,
I hate that. I just have to say, I
yeah,
hate that. I've been so lucky. Like, I've worked in companies where, you have people who are Portuguese or Hispanic, and they flip flop back and forth in the language. They're like, Portuguese, English word, English word, English word, into a Portuguese word. And I love that. I think that that's great. And I've worked in
mm-hmm,
companies where they're like, they don't say anything about it. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
It just is. And I love
mm-hmm.
it when things are given the space to just be, where they
B,
don't have
yeah,
to be commented on. Some ways it's just even when you don't have to say, "This is great, look at them doing this."
yeah,
When they can just
mm-hmm,
do it and have it be
exactly.
normal.
And that I wanted it to be like that, because I don't think that the sisters would have suddenly landed in London and suddenly they're like these proper Victorian ladies. Like, they're
Yeah.
still
English
Mexican women who
roses.
are there. Exactly. And so, and I think a lot of their popularity, I imagine, at the time would have stemmed because they were different and other. They were still palatable to like the ton and, whatever, because they were wealthy and beautiful and dressed and played the part.
They were
They were
just exotic enough.
exotic. Exactly. Exactly. So, um, it was kind of interesting to kind of play with those dynamics. And frankly, I didn't have to touch on any of that at all. And I wondered if I was just giving myself headaches by incorporating stuff like that into the storyline. I could have just done a Bridgerton of it, right? Where it just was, you don't touch on any of the like social dynamics, or, you don't ever have to talk about colonialism, racism, xenophobia, like any of that stuff. And it just is about the story. I could have done that. And I kind of wondered many times while writing this book and revising it, why didn't I do that? That sounds so much easier. But again, I wanted it to be authentic, and I wanted it to um, be true to what I thought they would have, encountered at that time. And in many ways, a lot of those issues are issues that we still deal with now, just in like a different form. And so, yeah, I think this. I like how you asked me one question about the Spanish. I'm like, oh, let me tell you, and I just turned it into this whole other thing.
Well, I think that this is great because I do want to say this, like, at its core, it is a romance with enjoyable characters. And while that definitely is a part of it, and it drives the plot for anyone who's like, well, I don't want to necessarily read anything about like, race or this and that.
Yeah,
Like, it's there, but it's not like oppressive or in your face or anything like that. Like, it's there, it exists, we acknowledge it. But I would say that the bigger focus was on anti-slavery. That was
yeah,
really
mm-hmm,
that was really like the heavier conversation, in that that's something that like really affected Gideon, and that was powerful to think that there was, a half black person in England at that time in the world fighting this fight.
Hmm.
That's not something that you think about when you read about Victorian England, and so that was really great too. But again, like, this is all just nuance and extra color in the tapestry of this romance. It's not a political book, it's a romance book. I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
our watchers know that it's about the love.
Yes.
It's about the
Yeah.
love.
And that's what, like, I think in, like, the revisions process, you're a writer, revisions process can be kind of in depth and really gritty. And I know in the revisions process, my editor and I kind of had a conversation because she knew I kind of was throwing a lot into this book, and there is a lot in the book because I threw a lot into it, but we did tone it down a bit. And I think it's because I I wasn't sure if I would ever be in this situation again where I could tell a story about diverse characters and with such a backing from a big publisher. And so I really wanted to take advantage of it. And I wanted to kind of tell the story and touch on all the things that I thought that they would encounter. And there was a point in the revisions process where my editor and I were like, okay, this is the romance, like, it's a romance, so I have to focus on the relationship and it developing. And yes, the sisters relationship is like a subplot, like, it's there, but it's about the romance. And I need to take a step back and figure out what extemporaneous details, historical nuggets, what was adding to the story and pushing that romance forward, and what was there um, and could be cut, essentially. Because I think I'm a very big history nerd and I like to collect, like, historical details and information. And if I'm collecting them and taking them in, well, then I have to share that, right? And so usually my first draft, yeah, I know. My first draft, my second draft, my third draft are usually just full of, like, all these cool details I learned, but they don't necessarily add to the plot or they don't necessarily push the romance forward. But I have to share them. Like, I have to,
I
because
think
it's just, I need to empty my brain of those details. And even if I know they're going to be cut, like, my editor has to read them first. So I'm sharing them with somebody. So,
if I
so
know, you've got to know. Like, this is
exactly.
the
So once
relationship
I
we're
like,
having.
once I tell those details, I'm much more comfortable getting rid of them. But
Mhm.
also with this story specifically, because of what Gideon's purpose was, like what he was working towards, and even what the sisters were dealing with, is so much that, they were fleeing their homeland because of this conflict with the French. And it wasn't like they were just seeking asylum, like their father is a very integral member of the government that was just ousted by the French. And so they have a lot of emotional connections to what is occurring in Mexico. And so I couldn't not talk about those things, right? I couldn't not talk about what was happening with the slave trade because that's so integral to what Gideon does.
Mhm.
And I couldn't not touch on sort of the history behind the French occupation because that's why the Luna sisters were in, London in the first place. So a lot of it was trying to balance um, everything that was happening, everything that was going on with the romance. And um, sometimes I don't know if I always did that correctly, but I tried really, really hard. But yeah, this book, just in scope with what was occurring, what was happening, just felt very big, but just because their worlds and what they were concerned about was big. I would say book two and book three are much more narrowly focused on the
Because
romance.
we've learned about the world. We already
Mm-hmm.
know where we're it's the same thing in fantasy novels and even sci-fi novels. When you're building that world where you need to understand,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening socioeconomically, where do these people fit in class-wise, socially, what, you know, things beyond who they are as a character and what, they're trying to accomplish, and so that makes complete sense. And it's funny, we talk about, and I've talked about with other authors too, what do you include, what do you not include? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I stitched something on TikTok. Somebody asked, like, what do you include? What do you want to see? And I was like, you can know what kind of toilet paper they use. I don't need to know. I don't need
Mm-mm.
to know.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
I'm very much that way. Like, it's so easy as a writer because we find our research fascinating. That's the reason why
Mm-hmm.
we wrote it down. That's the reason why. Um, and so it's so easy to to dive too deep and have the reader say, I didn't want to read a book about the era. I wanted to read a book about this romance. And so, like you said, like, thank God for editors because
I
they have
know.
such an acute eye. Like,
Mm-hmm.
thank God for them because I'm like, this paragraph makes complete sense. And they're like, does it though?
Yeah,
Does it
exactly. I got back my revisions letter for my second book, not last week, but the week before. And I've been slowly like getting started and looking through what I need to work on. And I'm reading through the comments and I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I thought that this worked great. And then I see my editor's comment. I'm like, of course I should have thought that. Like, of course. Like, what was I thinking? I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. But thank God for her because now it's going to hopefully be like a decent book instead of whatever mess I threw at her initially. Wow.
Nobody should, be subjected to the first draft. There, like, there's a phrase like in fan fiction, there's like, no beta, we die like men.
I
That's
think
all.
that's exactly what I did with the first draft I turned in for this book. I felt like I was just like, here's this mess. But I have a writer friend who's like, well, your job security for her, like that's her job is to edit. So if she doesn't have anything to edit, then what's her job? I'm like, true, that's true.
I like that you played with your hair when you said that.
I
That's
know.
true. That's true. Well, one of the, like, I enjoy, that, like, we know each other. I was super stoked about the book. I was happy to buy it on my Kindle, but then I showed you a picture because I walked into Barnes and Noble and I saw it, and it
Yes.
was so great because it was front facing. Right? There's so many books that, you just see the spines, and this was front facing out. And
That's
it
always
was
very
together,
exciting.
yeah, like there were all these books that were all illustrated covers, because this is
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like this is like a new trend, is to have like these beautifully illustrated covers that are nice and like
Mm-hmm.
cartoony or stylistic. Um, but yours was the only cover that looked like yours. And not only, like, so many of them had, I'm an illustrator, so a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
them
So yeah.
had the characters kind of standing in a certain way or like leaning against each other. And everybody was white with ginger hair, like, like it was everybody.
Yeah.
And so yours just front facing the way that it was, with the color that's in it, with them leaning together romantically in a dance. Yes, like, yes. And my Kindle shut off, otherwise I would show it again. Oh my God, could you imagine if I accidentally smashed? There's a
Oh
death.
my God.
If I accidentally,
Oh
like,
no.
I would have liked to say that would have been an outtake, but I just would have kept it, and I would have wept while continuing to speak with you. Like, I'd be like, I'm waiting for next Christmas so I can.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was so cool. It was just so cool to see that, and that's why I had to take a picture and show you.
And I'm really glad that you did. It's like really exciting to see the book like facing out, especially I write historical romance. Like I understand that it doesn't have as broad of appeal as like contemporary or even fantasy or whatever. And so and then the fact that there's like brown people on the cover, like I understand. So I appreciate like seeing seeing it in bookstores, especially when it's facing out. Like that's very exciting. And it's like everything I had hoped that I would get from a cover. And especially, this is my first illustrated cover. Historical romances are known for like, right, like their clinch poses like this, but with like actual people, and his shirt's falling off, and hers is really low. And I mean, I love those covers. That's one of the things I love about historical romance is the covers. But my publisher Berkeley made it very clear from the beginning that I would be getting an illustrated cover, and I was like, that's fine. However, I have a lot of opinions about that cover. And It did, and I told them, and I was like, I wanted them to be in a clinch pose because that's like historical romance. So I wanted like a clinch pose. I was like, I want it to be bright and colorful. I was like, I want like the skyline for London in it, and I just want I was and at the time when we started talking about the cover, it was probably like 4 or 5 months after Encanto came out. So I gave them like a lot of inspiration pictures from the movie. I was like, I wanted to like
Love
just
Encanto.
scream that it's like a Latino, book like with flowers, and I wanted to be really vivid. So when I first got the design, the first sketch, I was like, oh my God, I started crying. I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. And we just had the start of our cover conversation for book 2 a couple weeks ago. And once again, I was like, okay, here you go. Let me just show you everything I'm thinking for this. And send them like a Pinterest board with inspiration. So I'm really excited to see what they come up with. And I think I have the same cover designer or illustrator again.
Nice, nice.
At least that's my understanding. So
Keep that consistency.
the branding and all that stuff. Yeah.
Nice. I like that. And I think there's definitely something about being proud of your own cover. Like I released a dark romance, and it's a dark Omegaverse romance. And so when you look at the covers that are online, when you're doing your research of what the market looks like and this and that, they're
Exactly.
all greased up naked man chest, like all of it. And I actually said to myself, like, there was a real large conversation because Omegaverse was naked, greasy man chest, and dark romance was like, think of 50 Shades of Grey cover, a black.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and super, super slick and sleek, right? And so I had this huge conversation with myself, like, which audience do I want to focus on more? And what would I be more proud to put on my shelf as an author?
Yeah.
And like knowing that, and please forgive me because Omega, like I wrote a very, very spicy book. My mom was buying it, and she's like, "I'm buying it and I'm reading it," and I'm like,
You're like, don't even tell me about it. So I tell my
like,
parents,
okay,
I don't need you to tell me.
the least I can do for you, Mama, is make sure that it doesn't have greasy man chest.
That's true. I really liked that cover. It's Allshair and Rexon Heath. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I really like that cover. And I think it like projects that like vibe really well. Yes, see? With his expression and those brows down like that, where he means business. That's an alpha.
Yes, that is an alpha. That is an alpha face. Thank you for remembering.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have like a little stack of my books over here, just the different ones. Because I'm ridiculous. So I have a regular job, and sometimes it comes up in conversation that I'm a writer, and I'm just like, oh, what do you like? And then I'm like, I just start whipping them out, and I'm like, do you like this?
You're like this? Like this?
Yeah, like I'm like people are like, don't put on LinkedIn that you write erotic stories, and I'm like, oh, excuse me, I already did. I actually checked with my company's PR team because I repost a lot of stuff from my company, and I'm like, am I allowed to do this? Or rather, let me say, I'm going to do this. Will you fire me? And they're like, no, we won't fire you. Just don't.
Oh,
don't
that's great.
company name onto it. So I just think it's really funny because I run an online community for like tech people. And when the tech people like come to follow me online, I'm just like, erotica novelist. Yes, and I run your technical community.
Yeah, because you can do both. You could do it all.
Yes. Why not? Why not?
I
the way I said it to somebody once was, because somebody was talking about the spice in books nowadays, that we don't always fade to black, we don't always close the door, that we're there for that moment. And somebody was really not put off by it, but just curious about the trend that way, about not having the fade to black. And I said, well, if you look at popular media like Game of Thrones, like look at how much went on in Game of Thrones. And, and there's so Bridgerton, like that was super, super popular. And that's what it is. And my mother said to me once, I'm going to bring her up again. She said, why is it that we as a culture are fine watching violence and people killing each other, but we're not fine seeing something that 99.9 of percent of the population actually does. Like, you are
Hmm.
probably not going to kill someone, but you're probably going to have not a fade to black.
Yeah. Hmm. And I think that there's always been like open door scenes in books. I just feel like maybe romance has become some forms of romance have become more mainstream. So those open door scenes are like, oh, like they're titillating, but they've always been there. Like at least in the books I've read, they've always been a part of it. I just think that maybe it's because of Colleen Hoover or Emily Henry or like whatever that's making them more mainstream or more palatable to like this wider audience. I think there's this belief in that they have to have closed door scenes, and some of them do, but a lot of them don't. So,
I remember
and
being
I
young.
agree with you.
I remember being young, and I would go into my nana's bedroom, and my nana had a bookshelf, and there were all these Harlequin novels, and I would pick them up and read them. And I'm talking like I'm like 12, like I'm super
I'm like
not
this because
pubescent.
this is my story too with
Yep,
my nana's
yep,
Harlequins on her shelf.
yep.
Yes, that's how I came across them too.
And I will never forget. I don't remember what happened around it, but I remember being 12 and not knowing what they meant by a purple arrowhead.
And you're like,
I
what?
was like, it's stuck in my brain. I'm like, what? What is that? What is
All
that?
the euphemisms. That's so funny. Oh no. Yeah, I remember reading like a Nora Roberts, like a Harlequin silhouette or something with like the purple borders for that like line. I don't even know if it was Harlequin. I just know it was silhouette. And I remember reading one of them, and I don't even remember what happened. I remember just putting down my book and being like, maybe I shouldn't be reading this. This is not for me. And then, of course, because I was like 12 or 13, I was like, just started reading again. Look, my introduction was women finding enjoyment in sex, then I think that's a really great introduction.
I think so. I
I
definitely
think it was
think
very
so.
healthy.
And yeah, very healthy and very empowering, right?
Yes,
Because there's
exactly.
definitely a time in life where, in recent history, where women weren't allowed to enjoy content like that. They were supposed to be these pure, pristine things that didn't
Hmm.
know what this even was until their wedding night. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, it's great to see this kind of liberative. And I actually didn't start reading scenes like that until I started reading fan fiction. I
Oh,
because
okay.
I tended to read like horror novels and
Hmm.
psychological
Hmm.
thrillers, and like when I read romance, it was folded into one of those scenarios, so it didn't go there.
Oh, that makes sense. Hmm.
So
That makes
I
sense.
was fascinated to like see people give such um respect or tenderness to that kind
Hmm.
of situation. and
Hmm.
and and that's something that like struck me about this book, is that when they finally have their scene together, it is so tender. I felt, they have their passion and they have this and that, but it's their feelings for each other are not lost in the moment.
Yeah, I'm so glad because I think that at least to me, I felt like the scene worked and the depth of the emotions that they had for each other worked in that scene because the book had spent so much time building up their friendship. So when that actually happened, at least to me, I hope it felt more believable because they had spent time on the page. They had established that they really respected each other, that they mutually liked each other. They were attracted to each other. There was just these obstacles that had been in their way before that weren't there now. And I liked the thought that Anna Maria has spent like her whole life like taking care of others and seeing to others' needs and like twisting herself into a pretzel shape to like meet her father's like very strict demands or and here she is trusting putting this great deal of trust in Gideon and him taking care of her in turn. And valuing her and praising her and um, just really ensuring that her, not just her first time, but like her every time is as wonderful as he can make it because he values her so much. And that's another way for him to show her that that he values her and that he respects her. And, um, yeah, and I know that was a wait to get to get there because it happens so much later in the book. But
Oh,
again,
I
like
love
just
the phrase that you just used, her first time and her every time. Like,
yeah,
what a romantic thing to say. That was just really great. I liked it.
thanks,
Usually my insides get all squishy. Like, oh,
thanks. Well, I feel like Gideon, for all that he is, very proper and kind of very austere, and doesn't smile a lot. I think, at least I hope that it was like clear to the reader that he basically kind of came alive whenever she was around. And so I don't know. I feel like the opportunity to marry her was like something he wouldn't even have dreamed possible. So suddenly he did, and he's going to spend every day for forever, like making sure that she knows how happy he is to be married to her. And it's really cute because I got to, obviously I'm like writing book 3 now, and you read book 1, so you know how Gabby is with Gideon. How she teaching him Spanish, and she very much is like bullies him to like do stuff for her, right?
yeah,
So there
Gabby's
was a
kind of a
scene,
bully in general. She's kind of got a
yes,
little bit of that little.
that younger sister, like you're going to pay attention to me, and So I'm writing her book right now, and Gideon was like in one of the scenes, and it was really fun to like write the two of them together because now even I can tell writing Gabby's book, she's older, she's more mature, she's been through some things and has just kind of become more of the person that she had hoped or wanted to be. Because she still lives in London with her sisters, and it's fun to kind of pair this older, more mature Gabby with Gideon, who's still, sort of the same, right? Because you don't completely change who you are as a person, and
Me, I'm me
it
right now. Like, I'm
yeah.
40 years old. I don't know why I'm looking at my wrist, but I'm 40 years old. Like, this is it for me. Like, I'm gonna do like maybe I'll become more decrepit and I'll complain more. Maybe I'll tell kids to get off my lawn. Like, but other than that, like, this is it. Sorry.
My birthday was yesterday, and I was talking with my sister about how I can feel myself slipping into my senora era, my like old age, and I'm like all about it. Like, yes, I'm much more comfortable in who I am as a person. Like, I know myself, like, and I can see like my characters doing that too, right? Like just maturing and stepping into who they are. And you know what? The happiness will do that to you too, right? Like, what if you're happy, you're more content, you tend to be more confident. And it just occurred to me that right now, like, yeah, that's probably why he's a little bit more, mellow and whatever, because he's so happy, like at home and, whatever. But
I love that whenever
yeah,
you reflect on something, you're always
sorry.
saying, "No, I love it." Like if I was to write your character, whenever you would be retrospective, introspective, play with your hair. I like to pretend like I know
My
words.
thoughts are turning around in my head, like my finger is turning around in my hair. Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
pretty much.
Yeah. Let it
Well,
be
now I'm not
written.
going to do that. I'm going to go like this. I'm not going to touch it again.
So I know that you're writing book 3 right now, and so book 2 is already written, and you said the Isabella story, right?
Yes. I'm
So
working on revisions for it right now.
great, and I imagine that they're all kind of coming into their own love stories. Am I right?
Yes. Hmm. Isabel's book, I can tell you the tropes. It's like enemies to friends to lovers
And for
with
another
a
slow
bit of,
burn.
well, not sort of, not quite
Mm.
of a slow burn like Anna Maria's. um, There's also a bit of like the wallflower rogue trope. I don't know if you, okay, I love that trope. Um, there's a little bit of the teach me, I guess you can say, trope. Not a
Ooh.
lot, but there's some like hints of that. What else? I think those are the big ones right now that I can think of.
All right,
Yeah.
I will not let you spoil everything, but that teased me into interest. I was interested anyway, but now I'm even more interested.
It's I loved writing Isabel like more than I thought I would. I don't know why. I didn't have, maybe because she was like the quiet sister, and I think I was so focused on writing Ana Maria, and then Gabby is so loud.
Bold.
She's Yes, she's my Aries sister, and I think it shows. She's so fiery, and then I think that Isa was like just quieter, and so being in her head and like writing her POVs was just so much more enjoyable than I was expecting. I like love her. I love her. I love writing her. She's quiet but very confident, and
Smart.
it was
Smart.
very smart. And so I needed to pair her with a love interest that would recognize that. I think she's used to being like the sister that's overlooked. And so she needed to be with someone who never overlooked her, who always saw her there, even if he didn't like fully recognize her worth, essentially, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, writing their love story was, I loved it. And it's great. It's great now because I turned it in November 1st, the first draft, or, like I turned in the book then. And now I just got back revisions. So I've had like lots of time to kind of like get them out of my head. So now revisiting the story has been like it's, it's been great because I'm coming to it with a clear mind and with fresh ideas and kind of falling in love with the two of them all over again. So
You've let it
yeah, I like
marinate.
revisions too.
Marinate.
Exactly. And I'm like a revisions person. I don't really like drafting. I do it because I have to. I have to do it, not because I want to do it. I don't like blank pages. So I almost always cry when I get an edit letter back just because it's like emotional for me to, I don't know, confront criticism, even if it's like wedged between all these compliments. It's still really, I don't know. I kind of just embrace that that's how I am, and I just kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
But then I always really love revising and like incorporating feedback and like really taking the book to the next level. So I'm happy to be kind of working on revisions. Maybe not happy. I'm, it's satisfying. That's a good
Yeah.
word. It's satisfying.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's definitely a benefit to working with a publishing house as opposed to doing something kind of freelance and self-publishing because you have an intrinsic developmental editor. Whereas
Yes.
when you do self-publishing, developmental editing is really expensive, really expensive. So,
Mm-hmm.
even line editing is pretty expensive, but you gotta do line editing. Like, there's no
Mm-hmm.
way on earth I will ever release anything into this world without having it be edited. That's just me to God.
Yeah.
I never do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Same. Mm-hmm.
that developmental edit is so great because, like you get those fresh ideas that you can put in. And,
Mm-hmm.
God help me, same thing. I could get a million compliments and then you give me one criticism in that million things. And I'm like, that's the only one I hear. I only hear that.
Exactly. My brain will fixate on that one. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but how great and what a benefit, I recommend that everybody query their books, for a period of time, unless you're writing really niche where there's really nobody kind of
Mm-hmm.
publishing in that thing. Like, there's no harm to querying because there's such benefit sometimes to going the regular publishing route. And it's not that you don't get all the excitement too, because you've done your own kind of marketing and social media hype, and you still get to kind of do that and be out with the people
Mm-hmm.
who are reading your book. So you're not missing out on that part, but you just have so much more support behind you.
Yeah. I um I've been really lucky so far in my relationship with Berkeley. They've been very supportive. They were very supportive of Anna Maria and the Fox, and I felt like my team was excited about the book, not just like, okay, we acquired this book and now we need to pitch it. Like I felt like they were genuinely excited to share it and promote it. And I think the cover is like indicative of that they wanted to really give it the best launch, because really the cover is like the first launch, right, of the book. And I was published with a smaller press, who were great to work with too. I've been very blessed in like my publishing relationships with publishers where I felt supported. But I've also self-published, 2 novellas, like a novella series. And so, I've kind of seen it from that end too, having to do all the marketing and the business aspect of it myself, which I don't mind doing. Um, like I didn't mind doing it for this novella series. I don't know that I could do it all the time with like every book. Um, Only because of just who I am as a person and kind of like how I operate. Um, I just know that those aren't my strengths. So if I'm going to do them, I'd rather do them for like a smaller project where I can like really try my best to, launch it on my own into the world. And because it's like a smaller project, I don't feel like I'm investing as much into it. So then therefore I won't hate myself if it's not as successful as I want it to be.
Sold
Um,
20 copies.
but I think there's like all different kinds of ways to publish, and I love that. I love that people can find like what they're good at and what works for them. Because I know a lot of people who don't want to be traditionally published because frankly it is also a huge pain. And you have to relinquish a lot of control to your editor, to your not so much my editor, but like to the house, a lot of rights to it. Um, there's so many battles that you can wage over the process and a lot of things you just have to kind of roll over on. um, and if you're a person who values having control of every step of the process, then definitely traditional publishing is not for you. Um, but I'm very much a kind of person like, I don't want to worry about the business stuff. Like, I don't want to do that at all. I'd rather just write.
Yeah.
I do. I just want to write. I just want to pin pictures on a Pinterest board. And when I ask for inspiration, I'm like, here you go. Here's the board I put together. Um, there's still business aspects to what we do no matter what. I still have to write a newsletter. I still have to, I'm going to be at Book Bonanza, which is a big book reader conference at the end of June. I have to like organize all my stuff to go there. And I don't know how many times I was like, I really wish I had like an assistant to book my rooms, send my books there, do all the logistics organizing because I had to handle all of that. I didn't want to handle any of that. I like that stuff. Someone, but that's why it kind of is a comfort to me. Like if I don't even like doing that, like I, for me at least personally, I'm glad I'm not strictly self-publishing because I think I would drive myself crazy. I like to dip my toes into it here and there and enjoy that part of it, but yeah. But I like that there's like an avenue for everybody. You have to choose and find what's right for you and what works.
Yes. And I think it's great because people are able to write things that aren't, how do I put it? I might not be putting this the right way, but the safe choice, right? Like you're able to
No,
write
absolutely.
things that are so much more niche, because big publishing houses, they want to make their money back, and then
Hmm.
some, right? So they're going to pick the sure thing. And not everybody can write the broad or want to write the broad
Absolutely.
appeal books.
Hmm.
And this gives them a venue to be able to, still get their story out, still um, have people read it, enjoy it, and experience their worlds, without that restriction. But
And I find, at least to me personally, from what I see, some of the most successful self-published authors are the ones who write a niche in like a niche market because they then become synonymous with that niche. Like if you think of Blue Aliens, like I immediately think of Ruby Dixon. Like that's what she writes. And so you build up this reader base who like knows that you write blue alien romances, or that you write like C.M. Nacosta writes like the Minotaur, the have you read that book? The
No, I
Morning
haven't.
Glory Milking, yeah. Morning Glory Milking Farm or Milk Farm.
All right, this is me
She
writing it
writes like
down.
monster romances. There are those who like write, you know, what is it? Why choose
Mhm.
romances?
Oh, yep.
You know, and
Reverse
so if
harem.
I was
Reverse harem
yeah,
is big.
exactly.
Yep.
So if I were to just focus on self-publishing, I would do exactly that. I would find like a niche and I would just write that really well, and then hopefully like you build up, because big publishers are not going to take chances, right? Like you said, they're not going to take chances on these sort of niche books. But if they prove themselves to be successful, they have no problem swooping in and offering a big publishing contract to these self-published authors for like these series. They do it all the time. Think of all the books that like went big in self-publishing that like a big publisher then comes and swoops up because they've proven their success,
Yep.
right? And so, I personally think that that's not only great to write something that you love and enjoy, no matter how small you think the market is, but also from a business standpoint, you're the big fish in this little pond and you build yourself up and you become synonymous with that like niche market, then that's great for you. Like your readers are going to be super loyal.
I think that that's the challenge that I have. There are people who follow my writing because they like my writing in all of its variations, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a dark omegaverse. I wrote a choose your own adventure, a fantasy.
Oh, that's right.
I
Yeah. Uh-huh.
wrote, and I just came out with a fairy tale short stories, right? Like, and I got to tell you, if we talk dark omegaverse romance, I'm writing a sequel to that book that actually a fan requested. But
Oh,
you take the
wow.
people who want to read dark omegaverse romance, and then you bring it down and you say the main character is the best friend in this one, and it is a gay black male. So let's just take this readership and whittle it down. But I'm like, I'm writing it anyway. Like I got my
Yeah. Because
sensitivity readers line. Like let's go for this. Um, but I've realized that it's not. It's been so much fun from an artistic point of view,
oh, absolutely.
but it's doing me no favors in my pocket. So there's that thing you have to fight yourself for
Mhm.
when you're self-published, because it's so easy. We talk in writing all the time about plot bunnies, right? Like
Mhm.
there's this plot
Mhm.
bunny, it just catches your attention and takes you over here. And if you're trying to focus in on your genre, right,
Your brand.
your
Mhm.
brand, there are times where you have to just let those little plot bunnies go, and I have not learned to let the plot bunnies go. I had one reader who's
That's
like, I
yeah.
want this book, and I'm like, I will write this book for you. Like I will
That's
write.
awesome. And that's, you know what? Like if you're having fun, or if you have clear expectations before you start this project of what you hope to get out of it, and even if all you get out of it is the satisfaction of having written that book and put it out there in the world, then that's great. Like that, then you're doing exactly what you had hoped to do for that project. And I think that that whole writing what you love versus writing what's marketable, I don't think that that is a that is something that writers will ever get away from, right? Because sometimes if you're lucky, you're right, what you're writing because you love it is also marketable. Like with my Luna Sister series, I had been wanting to write like a Latinx historical probably since the beginning of my career. I just hadn't had the best idea. I wasn't sure if the past ideas I had would work or be marketable. And it just so happened I had this idea at the right time when they wanted it, and it all worked out. But I mean, I've had other series that I just fell in love with that never sold because it's like they never had anywhere to go. And I've always had friends who are like, "Oh, you should self-publish it," and I'm like, ideally that would be great because I would love to share the series with other people. But my focus has been to be traditionally published. So how to find the time then to write this other series if it's my aim for it is not to publish it traditionally.
Yeah.
We only have so many hours in the day. I'm a mom, and so trying to balance
Hold on,
all of
hold
that is
on.
hard.
Don't forget Santa's
Yeah.
giving you a
Oh,
whip.
that's right. That's right.
I've got.
That's right. Thank you,
I've got something in my eye. Oh. Oh my goodness. So we're about at time. Is there anything you'd like to say to close out the call?
I just had a really great time chatting with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
I loved it. It was so much fun. So much fun. So
Absolutely.
if we're talking about getting your work published, what's your best advice? Traditionally published.
Traditionally published. Figure out what genre you want to write and read as extensively as possible in that genre so you get a feel for what's selling and what readers are reading. And then once you have a solid manuscript to share, just start querying. Don't just sit on your laurels while you're out querying. Start working on your next project. Because if I learned anything in my career, it's to keep going and to keep trying and moving forward. And publishing takes forever. The timelines are just so long. So you might as well use that time to your advantage and start working on your next project, because that first project, as much as you love it, might not sell, but the second one might, or the third one. And if you have those books to share, not only are you like honing your skills, your writing skills with each project you write, you also have that there to share, where there may be an agent who was like, I don't think this book is right for me, but I really like your writing style. Do you have something else to share with me? I do. I have this book.
As a matter of fact.
Exactly. That's one thing that I've learned. You just kind of keep going and keep rolling and expect rejection. And then that makes the successes that much sweeter.
Awesome. Well, that's beautiful. So for everyone watching, I'm going to go ahead and put all of her social details in the bottom. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And in my channel, you'll also be able to see other author interviews as well as me reading chapters from my own story. So let's stay on together and say goodbye to everyone else. Goodbye.
And what does little Timmy want for Christmas?